Hey everyone, welcome to Hit the Apex podcast. I'm Jawad as always, and thank you for joining me this week. New week, but I guess I'm still on a bit of a post-podcast high from last week. Just had great fun with the guys from Regen E-Racing Podcast, Dino and Chris. Special shout out, I guess, to you guys again for coming on and giving us a good show and everything. So if you haven't heard that one yet, or if you're new to the podcast, go back and listen to the Ringers and Mashup. I guess it was, funny title in my mind at the time, but it was good fun, that one. And I was supposed to go on to Sportaholic podcast as well over the weekend with my good mate Joshua Kerr. Unfortunately, that didn't happen as it was supposed to. Some technical gremlins for him on the other side of the world, but I was able to send in some voice messages to answer some of the questions that he had for me about the Supercars Championship. So go check that out as well. Sportaholic podcast, that's Joshua Kerr's. I'll probably put a link in the description for it, and you can hear me talking about supercars for young Josh. So that was how that ended up. But big weekend for podcasts last weekend. We had some racing on as well. Finally, live racing. I was able to watch the IndyCar Genesys 300 there at the Texas Motor Speedway. I'll be talking about that. Supercars with their schedule for the upcoming Sydney Motorsport Park round, and some MotoGP later on as well. So first and foremost, hope everyone's safe and keeping healthy, keeping positive and all that. I know times are tough at the moment, and I was going to talk a little bit about that later on as well, but let's crack into it. Let's talk supercars. It's good that someone like Josh, who's new to supercars, is getting very involved with it, asking a lot of questions, and I would hope that I am giving some good information for him to watch when we get to Sydney Motorsport Park in a couple of weeks' time. It is end of June. It's going to be on 25th, I believe, so only 2 weeks away. So we got the formats though. I was kind of wrong with what I said or what the message I sent over to him, but he did correct me on it because I did record them before the announcement. And there's going to be 3 130 kilometre sprint races. All 3 of the races will be 33 laps. There'll be 1 compulsory pit stop. That was the thing that I was wrong about. I thought they might not do pit stops due to social distancing and how many people that they can have per team in the garage, etc. But they will allow 1 compulsory pit stop per race just for tyres. So all the cars will be fueled from the start, so they can't add extra fuel. So only 1 tyre stop. There'll be 6 team members per car in pit lane to service. So instead of the 8 that we usually have in a normal situation, and instead of 4 rattle guns for the tyre stops, there'll be 2 rattle guns. So basically, they've put in a plan, they've announced a plan, they're firm about it, to minimise the staff that are there on site, and also to keep up the social distancing measures as well. So that's good to see from that way, and hopefully that'll mean some exciting races that we will have a bit of strategy come into it, even if it is 1 pit stop. Bit of a shake-up in qualifying as well, so there'll be a top 15 shootout on Saturday instead of the traditional top 10 shootout that we have at so many of the supercar events. There'll be the drivers previously, if they don't make the top 15, they'll be eliminated, of course, in those sessions. There'll be a 20-minute rookie-only practice session on the Saturday, followed by 2 normal free practice sessions, and then straight into qualifying. So, and then, individual qualifying sessions on the Sunday for the 2 races that we'll have on Sunday. Also, we've got the broadcast team trimmed down to have minimal staff as well on site. So, your chief commentators and stuff like that will be there. Neil Crompton, Mark Scaife. There'll be Mark Larkham in the pit lane as well, but that's it. No Greg Murphy, no Rihanna Crean. With Murph, unfortunately, he's in New Zealand, so I guess him coming over the ditch a bit difficult. So that's even the broadcast, and I imagine media as well will be pretty limited to how many journalists and reporters would be able to come on site too. Some interesting stuff though with restrictions on live data to the team, so no data logging till post-race, things like 3 sets of tyres for the weekend from Dunlop, and then they've got to hand them back afterwards. And that's all part of the cost cutting that they're looking at, and to minimise costs in the future, but also perhaps make the racing a bit more exciting. The fact that, teams don't have access to all the data that they do presently, it's going to force drivers to be a bit more old school with the way that they go around their weekend, not relying so much on data to be able to, now I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, data to focus on their setups and everything. It's all about feeling and how they feel in the individual. So that'll be really important, and I think we might see a bit of a mix-up there. But you know what? I think at the end of the day, like the fast guys are going to be fast, the quick teams are going to be quick, and then we might get an odd surprise depending on strategy and whose car will suit which track the better. So that's that part. Fans, I guess, still, you're obviously not going to get fans, and even though in Sydney or in New South Wales they have opened up corporate boxes to supporters at the NRL, and I think with the AFL as well this weekend, basically using the same rules as restaurants are, where everyone's got to be spaced out in the suite or the corporate box, and it has to be a licensed food venue and everything, so that's why they're only allowing them in, so the same rules as a restaurant. I reckon, and I've said this all along, that we might see fans in Darwin. I think Darwin will be the venue where they should maybe open it up to a few fans, and that's because Northern Territory has lifted pretty much all of their restrictions apart from opening up their borders, so I reckon just locals will be able to come along to the event. Obviously, if they have to do the social distancing, 1.5 metres apart and everything, but I think it'd be really good reward for those people up in the Northern Territory who have really done well to make sure that they have 0 active cases, and they've had that for quite a while now, a couple of weeks, I think, at least. And yeah, when the bars and the pubs open, that things are all right. So good on them. I reckon, that will be when we should see some fans back trackside, but it will be locals. Winton, they were talking about opening up the campgrounds potentially, but that was blocked by the government, Victorian government, so they came out with a statement, did Winter Motor Raceway, and say that wasn't going to happen. Though I reckon in the future, if you can't have mass gatherings still, and people standing shoulder to shoulder in the on the hills or on the grandstands, Park and View would be an option for some of those permanent racetracks. So, places like Sandown, obviously, Sydney Motorsport Park, potentially we might be going back there because Supercars have got contractual obligations that they've got to meet by December 31st, which means that their plan to run 2 races into 2021 might not even happen. So, no trip to New Zealand, no second Bathurst sprint round, which, I really got my head around and was excited to have, but that might not happen. So they might do a night race at Sydney Motorsport Park instead. But yeah, some of those permanent facilities that are on the calendar, they'd be suitable for Park and View. And that's why I think, it's a shame that we can't have Phillip Island on the calendar this year. I actually swung past there, or was down there on Monday. First time in ages I've been to Phillip Island, and just needed a little day trip, and drove past the circuit, and from the main road you can see some of the corners already. It's such an open circuit, you can park up, and I'm sure there'd be good viewing options there. So obviously space out all the cars and make sure even just watch from your car, don't even get out of the car. So drive-in cinema basically, but with live motorsport. So that could be an option I'm sure they'll be thinking about for future races if we want to get limited or select amount of crowds back in. And then obviously distancing and spread out and everything would be great too. So yeah, that's pretty much it. As far as a proper preview is concerned, I don't think I'll have that for you until we get to the race weekend. So the Thursday or Friday before the resumption of the championship, I think we'll do a proper preview. What's a shortened, or it's not really a shortened season, but an altered season. What's the impact of an altered season going to have on the championship with the formats and everything? I think there could be an impact depending on how teams have prepared. I mean, we've seen already, in IndyCar, I'll talk about it in a bit, that the layoff has been a bit difficult coming back, and especially for rookies as well. You get back straight into the thick of it, and it's a bit difficult. You got Zane Goddard, Brody Kostecki, can't remember, Jake Kostecki, that's it, sorry. Zane Goddard, Jake Kostecki sharing that Matt Stone racing car this year, and Bryce Full as well. Even though they did get to race at Adelaide, it's been so long since February since we had that race in Adelaide. So what's the impact going to be for them when they come back? And even the experienced drivers, they've never had this sort of layoff before, and how's that going to impact them? Hopefully they do get to do a bit of testing before they get back. I'm not too sure about where they're at with that, or if they're allowed to run some private tests or something, but it would be pretty cool, just to be able to ease back into it. And we are seeing that in F1 at the moment. Mercedes hitting the track at Silverstone with both Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. Racing Point is going to do the same thing as well, get their drivers back up to speed. So yeah, just nice to kind of ease into it and everything. So, and as I was saying before about cost cutting, the discussion, I guess, happening everywhere in motorsport at the moment, given the current circumstances, and pretty sad, to hear that GTE, which is part of the IMSA and World Endurance Championships, potentially could be on the decline and on the way out as well. So with Porsche announcing that they weren't going to continue their operation in North America in the IMSA Championship, and even at Le Mans they're only going to have 2 cars this year, so could be a championship or could be a category that is on the way down, which would be really sad too. So yeah, and important for supercars as well, with things like having the restriction on live data and all the other stuff that they're talking about could be crucial to securing their long-term future. And without it, I guess we have no supercars, and we really like supercars no matter what they are and what they are and how they run. So with the IndyCar Championship, they just basically had a mega one-day event at Texas Motor Speedway. COVID, safety, biosecurity, all that was all over the place. You saw there was social distancing in the interviews with the broadcasters, the drivers wearing masks as well and standing, 1.5 metres away from the reporters when they were doing their interviews and everything. Teams as well wearing masks and gloves and all that sort of stuff. So, I guess they wouldn't have gone back to racing if they didn't have all these measures in place. And quickly, before I continue, the masks, face masks, how is that not an opportunity for branding or merchandise? I don't know if anyone's already mentioned this on social media or put it out there, but how cool would it be if we had some branded masks? Because face it, we're all going to have to wear them, or people are going to have to wear them, for the foreseeable future. Why can't we be a bit stylish about them? So, whether it's, driver helmet designs or team colours and stuff like that. I know Team Penske, they had their logo, a simple logo or simple version of their logo on the masks for their drivers, but get them kitted out, because we're seeing bands doing them, high-end fashion labels as well. There was a cool design I remember seeing with the Predator face, if you know the movie Predator. That was pretty cool, I've got to admit. So it's totally a marketing and merchandising opportunity there. Lewis Hamilton as well, obviously working closely with Tommy Hilfiger. He's got his own line, it's some Lewis branded exclusive face masks. I think that'd be quite stylish. So, why can't we be a bit stylish about this? So that there's something out there, like, have a papaya orange McLaren face mask or whatever, or, something like... or even print, driver faces on face masks. Sorry, just had a mind lapse there. Driver faces on face masks. So the opportunities there are limitless. So get on it, guys, if anyone's listening who can come up with it. Anyway, the racing. So Scott Dixon opening his account in 2020 with a dominant victory from the pole sitter Joseph Newgarden. So Penske, they were quick in qualifying, but unfortunately there was bad vibrations with the tyres during the race, forcing early stops for both Joseph Newgarden and Simon Pagenaud, last year's Indy 500 winner, and of course the reigning champion in Newgarden. So those guys struggling during the race, but they were quick in qualifying. Note as well that this was the first proper race that we've had, or race on an oval at this stage, that we've had with the new aero screens, and I know that they're a bit harder on the eye than the Halo in F1, but they're important. We know their importance, and how, especially in IndyCar, where on ovals, it's so dangerous, and we've seen so many big accidents over the years, and also accidents that have claimed people's lives as well. Dan Weldon, of course, still very vivid for many who watched IndyCar. Robert Wickens as well, who luckily he survived that crash, but his rehab is ongoing. It's been a long road to recovery for Robert, so we don't want to see massive accidents like that where drivers get seriously injured or risk losing their lives. So I guess for that purpose, the aero screen is there to stay and is very important, as we've learnt with the Halo in Formula 1. So later on in the race, we had a challenger to Dixon. I guess he didn't run away with it completely. His teammate at Chip Ganassi Racing in Felix Rosenqvist, in his second year, of course, in IndyCar. He was quick last year, but just made a lot of mistakes, and unfortunately that happened again in this race. He was closing in on his teammate. He could have even made a run for the win, but with 10 laps to go, he found a bit of traffic in the form of James Hinchcliffe, kind of lost control of the car. Didn't make contact, but just the Swede lost control and ended up out of the race. So that was a bit of a disappointment, and you could see on his team boss, Chip Ganassi's face as well, that he wasn't very pleased with seeing that happen again this year, as there was occasions where it happened last year. Charlie Kimball as well crashed out in the final lap. He was running inside the top 5, so disappointing for him, but it meant guys like Zach Veach went on to get a career best P4. Connor Daly on his return as well to IndyCar, up to P6 from 13th on the grid. And then McLaren, who obviously partnering up with Schmidt-Peterson Arrow this year. First of their runners, Oliver Askew, rookie in P9, so points on debut for the McLaren team. And then you had some big names, the likes of Will Power, who finished down in 13th, Alexander Rossi, hitting trouble from the start, and Takuma Sato not even racing because he crashed out in qualifying and they couldn't repair his car ready for the race. So what impact's that going to have on the championship too? Because that names like Will Power, Alexander Rossi, they're always up there, they're always fighting for the championship. So to have such an early blow in the season is not going to be good, given that I'm sure the season will be evolving as we move on. Then you had your rookies. Now, I said before when we were talking about supercars that rookies, they might find it a bit tough this year, obviously, not having had much, or having such a big break in between, when they did their pre-season testing at the start of the year or end of last year, and when they started their first race. And, of course, Jack Harvey finding trouble, but he did finish the race. He was in P16. And then your other rookies, Rinus VK and Alex Palou, coming together during the race, and both of them were out, unfortunately. So is that something that we're going to see affecting drivers in F1, the rustiness and everything, or will, the cream rise to the top and the guys who are, the best drivers, who win all the time, your Hamiltons, your Vettels, your Bottas's, Leclerc's, Verstappen's, are they just going to hit the ground running and be strong straight away? So that's going to be something that will be interesting. Obviously, you're going to be talking more F1, previewing it or previewing the upcoming races when we get closer. Still got, under a month to go, a few weeks, so plenty of time to get ready and just take in the fact that we're getting back there. It's been good to see IndyCar there, Supercars coming back too, MotoGP I'm going to talk about as well, with their European races having been dated and a restart date firmly in place. So we can think about that. We can think about our usual stuff again. Talk about the usual stuff again, as we love to do on the podcast. And wrapping up with the IndyCar, so Scott Dixon with that win. He's 4 wins now off Mario Andretti's record of 54, which is second all-time. And then you've got AJ Foyt, who holds the most winningest record of races in IndyCar with 67. And, with a lot of drivers saying that, the break has actually helped them, during the pandemic and everything, not racing. The break has actually helped them rest up and feel a lot more rejuvenated. Could this mean we see drivers, the older drivers, potentially go around for a bit longer, kind of extend their careers a little bit? So, and you can totally see with that performance that we saw from Scott Dixon that he's clearly got another championship in him, or a couple of championships. He's currently got 5 in the IndyCar, and then even chasing AJ Foyt's record of 67 wins all time would be something. And I forget as well that I said at the start of the year that I got to meet Scott Dixon at the Bathurst 12 Hour. Such a great guy, very humble, laid back. He's, despite all his success over there in America, he just feels like a regular Kiwi. He's just happy to talk to you, quietly spoken. Nothing brash about him at all. So it was good to meet him, get an autograph, get a photo taken, and ask him how he felt about being at Bathurst and everything, and how it feels to be, is it different than an IndyCar event where there's so much attention and everything on you, bigger crowd and not as laid back perhaps. But I guess at the moment it kind of makes no difference, given that there's no crowds or any fans and much media around the track. So that's that. And got to wait now a month till the next race, which will be on Memorial Weekend, or for 4th of July, sorry. I don't know my American holidays, excuse me. 4th of July, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. They're doing the race there. They've got NASCAR support as well, because they're doing the race around the Brickyard, or around the Oval. So it'd be good to see IndyCar racing on the Grand Prix circuit. Then they'll go back there again as well later in the year, as well as, of course, the Indy 500, which will be happening in August, and you wouldn't have thought that, given that the month of May is so vital, I guess, not vital, but like such an important time of year in motorsport, because you've got the Indy 500 and how IndyCar uses the entire month. It dedicates the whole month to the Indy 500. You got the race at the Grand Prix circuit, the Indianapolis road course. Jeez. The road course as well, being able to have that preceding the race, the big race at the end of the month, and then the Monaco Grand Prix 2 and Formula 1. And of course, this is the first time ever since I've started watching motorsport that we've not had a Monaco Grand Prix or an Indy 500 in the month of May. Though what really hit me, I've got to say, was this week on Monday that we had no Canadian Grand Prix on the public holiday. So we had the Queen's Birthday public holiday here on the Monday every year, and it's the first time in over 10 years that I didn't watch a Canadian Grand Prix on the public holiday, Queen's Birthday. And I think that's what hit me, because it's such a momentous day or morning or whatever. You get up early, 3 o'clock in the morning, get yourself in ready, have a coffee, get your computer on, especially for the live blogging and everything. And then 10 past 4 the race starts in the morning. Usually what I do to follow that off is you've got the E3 Expo on as well over there in the States, Gaming Expo, and Monday is usually when Microsoft, the Monday morning or, Sunday night over there is when Microsoft usually do their E3 briefings. So, over the years seeing big reveals, new games, consoles and all that. So it's kind of my routine, or has been my routine on that Monday to do that. And then of course the Queen's birthday footy as well between Melbourne and Collingwood in AFL. Been there a couple of times as well. A couple of fixtures been great. So, I think that was where it started to hit me that, we really are missing our usual routine and everything. Obviously, this weekend we'd have had Le Mans on as well, the 24 hours race. But there's going to be a virtual 24-hour race instead, which I do urge everyone to check out if you're into it. I know a lot of people, it's kind of over esports and e-racing, but I think a 24-hour race with so many drivers over the world, sim races participating, will be pretty exciting. So I might tune in for a few hours at key moments. Though good, I guess we've got the NRL, the rule changes have been positive with that, the one ref and everything in 6 again. AFL back this week. Last night we had the first game, Richmond and Collingwood. Bit of a doozy really, given that it was 36 all at the end of the day, like very low scoring, and ended in a draw, bit of a damp squib. And with the NRL, just focusing on my team, the Cowboys, and Supercoach and all that, and Cowboys really need to pick up their game, I think, given the fact that we've got such an easy draw until, a couple of rounds time when we play got teams like Newcastle and the Sydney Roosters and all that. So if we don't win against the Warriors tonight, this week, I'll be pretty disappointed. Or, I say that, I'll be pretty disappointed, but in reality, I'll be yelling at the TV and just all sorts of expletives. So, how's that for an image in your head? But I think ultimately, even though it hit me that it was no Canada, no this, no that, I think at this time, the lack of all this stuff should be offering us time to think more about, some of the bigger issues going on in the world, the atrocities being committed towards, the black community over there in America, all over the world and stuff like that. And I think now, given that we don't have all the stuff that we usually do, is an important time to focus on it and call it out, because for years this has been an issue, for years and years, and people obviously too scared or, feel like, they're going to be vilified if they do call it out. But to see the amount of people who have got behind this movement, influential figures, whether it's in the entertainment industry, whether it's in sport, it's so good to, you feel a lot more comfortable speaking out about this sort of stuff now, because that you've got like-minded people being able to voice their opinion and get it out there. And it is atrocious, the fact that we are in 2020 now, and this is still a problem. This is still a problem. There's other things that, as a human race and as a society we should be focusing on. But the fact that, we've got a part of the community that continues to be vilified and discriminated and excluded and, murdered, that's the reality of it. That's what the George Floyd death was. It was murder. And you read about how many other people, how many other black people are killed or brutally beaten up in police custody over there in America, and then here in Australia hearing about the Aboriginal deaths in police custody as well. It just makes you cringe, and your heart kind of cries out for justice for this sort of thing. So, no, not everyone, or not everyone, but people will say, oh, sports and politics should have nothing to do with each other, or you're a sports podcast, you shouldn't talk about this sort of thing. It's like, but this is a platform to be able to share that sort of opinion. Sports are a platform for sending a message of positivity, a message of change. Lewis Hamilton, he, a few weeks ago, or was it last week, I think, put a call out saying that he feels like his industry doesn't do enough to support this movement, or to support diversity and all that sort of stuff. And he basically said, you guys need to stand up, talking to the drivers and all the influential figures there. And suddenly, we had drivers like Daniel Ricciardo, Charles Leclerc, Tony Giovinazzi, all come out and, post their support and say that, and Leclerc said something on the lines of, he felt that it wasn't his place to make comment on that. But I guess, given the fact that we have people make negative comments about, this sort of thing, or, they want to say something negative about everything, because they have the power to do so, why not use use that platform to talk, or to give a positive message, to support the people who are having it tough at the moment, to support the black community, because Black Lives Matter, so we can end this systemic racism that's been going on for forever. It was even more sad reading about Darren Sammy, the West Indian cricketer, really, really great West Indian cricketer, top bloke, calling out his former teammates in the IPL over a nickname that he thought was nothing more than a nickname that they had for him, and they've been calling out to him for years. They've made social media posts. I'm not going to name the players. I know figured out which players it were on his team that were referring to him as that name, and I kind of, because I understand the Hindi language as well, I kind of figured out what the nickname was without even digging around for it. And I got to say, that it's not even something you should call someone a nickname. It's so derogatory. It is basically the Hindi equivalent of the N-word, which, yeah, need I say more? And Darren Sammy calling him out on social media, saying, you guys need to apologise to me, to those former teammates, apologise to me if you did mean it in a negative way, which, to me, that particular word that he's referring to, there's no other way of, unless you're describing an inanimate object, there's no other way if you're describing a person to refer to them without being derogatory with that term. So it's just very sad that, whether it's certain cultures or, certain belief systems and all that sort of stuff, that they haven't really adapted to as we've grown. We're in 2020. Diversity is so much more important than it has been, but there are still people out there who don't seem to get the message and are so caught up in ways where it just feels like you're dragging us back into the past, where, for some reason the past was better when it comes to society and culture and diversity and everything. So yeah, I know, sometimes, the lack of sport and everything does make you, or the lack of things you like, which, for example, is sport, makes you think a lot more about these sort of things. But it is important, and I do encourage you guys listening and everything to support this movement and to call it out. If you feel like you've been racially vilified or anything, call it out, whether it's in public or whatever. Have no fear, because more and more people now seem to be behind it and not afraid to speak out about it. We see on social media that all the negative people will not shy away from saying something rude or saying something racist against other people. So why not, call them out for it? It reminds me of the whole Adam Goods thing in the AFL, where, the stuff that he went through was just so shocking. And just yesterday they unveiled a mural for him in Sydney in Surrey Hills. So I'm sure next time I get to go to Sydney, I will go past there, take and have a look, because he is such an inspirational figure here for the Aboriginal community, and the fact that he was not. It was just relentless what happened with him. So disappointing. So take this opportunity, guys, to call that sort of stuff out, to make sure that we do our bit to end what is terrible. What is this terrible systemic thing called racism? I don't think I have much more to say on that without I don't want to be one of those negative people who pointing fingers and when you just need to call it out. Call out the racism, try and or put an end to it, and move forwards as a society, with diversity. So yeah, that's basically it. And actually, just before I remembered, the Bubba Wallace thing in NASCAR, wearing the Black Lives Matter or the I Can't Breathe t-shirt, pre-race as well, seen by many, I guess, who watch NASCAR, and then NASCAR's subsequent decision to ban the Confederate flag being present at their events. So I guess that's one positive step that they've made there, and good that Bubba Wallace being vocal in his support too. So alright, we'll leave it at that then. Have any questions and just want to talk, if you guys want to talk about it, feel free to get in touch, of course, on the Twitter account at HitTheApex Media. Be happy to share some thoughts and stuff, and if you just guys want to talk about this, or if you feel like you're in a bit of an uncomfortable position, just feel free to have a chat with me about it. I'll be happy to talk. So we'll end the podcast on a high note, talking about MotoGP, obviously with the announcement that we will get back to racing on July 19th in Jerez, back-to-back rounds in Jerez, and actually the whole calendar is just filled with back-to-back weekends like we have in Formula 1, so it'll be, I guess, their way of trying to get as many races in as possible. What impact that'll have on the championship we'll see come the first race at Jerez. After that we go to the Czech Republic in August, then back-to-back races in Austria, Red Bull Ring, which with Formula 1 we've got back-to-back races there as well, back-to-back races at Misano, so there will be no Italian Grand Prix there unfortunately this year, at Mugello, and Mugello potentially being talked about as a venue to host a second F1 race in Italy, potentially to celebrate Ferrari's 1000th Grand Prix in Formula 1, so at least we will go to the San Marino circuit or Misano in Italy. Then we go to Catalonia in Barcelona, 27th of September, France, the race in Le Mans, and then of course back-to-back races in Aragon and back-to-back races in Valencia. So they're the races that have got dates so far, races that are still potentially going to be on the calendar that haven't been announced as being cancelled, and we should get the dates confirmed before the 31st of July according to Dorna, Argentina, the Circuit of the Americas, Thailand and Sepang potentially as a season finale. So you'd think that with those races we would go into December, kind of mid-December, just before Christmas. But yeah, it's good that we've got some dates down. So F1, Supercars, MotoGP, IndyCar, it's all happening. And then we've even got dates for the 24-hour Le Mans as well later in the year. So it's all happening, man. I can't wait. But some other news with MotoGP too, some rider movements as well. We had the biggest news being Jack Miller is going to be promoted to the factory Ducati team next year. Danilo Petrucci, unfortunately, out, which I guess is a bit disappointing because we haven't even had a race this year, though the decision has already been made to put Petrucci out. He kind of ended last season on a bit of a whimper. His form wasn't as strong as it was in the middle part, where he did win the race at Mugello, his home race, and his one and only win in MotoGP. But Jack Miller, I guess, 5 podiums last year on the Pramac Ducati. Often he was the quickest of the Ducati bunch, on the same bike as the factory team, and beating the factory team even though he was a satellite rider. So a lot of potential around Miller. Ducati's last championship obviously came from Casey Stoner, so an Aussie to deliver another championship for Ducati, it is possible. But for Petrucci, there is possibility still. He could stay in MotoGP, possibly being talked to by Aprilia, who, have got the headache of Andrea Iannone facing an extension to the ban that he got for doping by the World Anti-Doping Agency. So we might not see Iannone back. So that could be a potential lifeline for Petrucci to stay in MotoGP with Aprilia. Aprilia actually announced that Aleix Espargaro's got a 2-year contract extension, so that's great for Aleix. Possibly his final contract, you would think, in MotoGP. He's been around for quite a few years now, and he's really doing good stuff with that Aprilia team, building them, basically built them from the ground up, taking them into a new direction ever since they got Massimo Rivola on board, the ex-Ferrari man. Of course, you F1 fans will know he was a key part of Ferrari's team a few years ago, and now he's leading the project at Aprilia in MotoGP. So Petrucci potentially could go there. If not, Ducati could have him in the World Superbike Championship. But, Petrucci's such a character, you don't want him out of MotoGP, so it would be nice to see him potentially end up at Aprilia. As for Dovi, Andrea Dovizioso, well, there's some talks that he might remain now at Ducati. I don't think Ducati have any other options, or the factory team, like they were going to go after someone like a Fabio Quartararo or Maverick Vinales, but they got signed up by Yamaha pretty quick. There was a rumour floating about that Ducati could approach Jorge Lorenzo again, but whether Lorenzo wants to commit to a full-time season, not sure. So I guess the safe bet would be to keep Dovi there, and I guess for Dovi it'd be like, well, what's the paycheck going to be like? Because there was talk of potentially of their relationship breaking down at the end of last year, and the possibility that Dovi would have moved on at the end of this year from Ducati. So if Dovi stays there, he's a solid rider. It's just unfortunate that the couple of opportunities that he got to win the championship a couple of years ago, it didn't work out for him. Marc Marquez came and won him. So Jack Miller, basically the guy touted as Ducati's chance for beating Marquez. Speaking of Marquez, well, Alex Marquez, he hasn't even raced yet for the Repsol Honda team yet. There's rumour floating around that Pol Espargaro, Aleix's brother, could be set to replace him next year. And Pol currently racing with the KTM team in a similar position, I guess, as his brother, as, he's basically trying to lead KTM to the front of the field, a lot of development and everything. And, Pol did get a podium with them a couple of years ago now at a wet race in Valencia. But I guess for Alex Marquez, it would be a great shame because he hasn't even had a chance to prove himself yet on the Honda yet. You've got Pol coming in to replace him for the next year. Or is this, possibly as a replacement for Marc Marquez? Because Marc Marquez has always been talked about, potentially going off to KTM. But I thought Marc Marquez signed a contract extension with Repsol Honda for a few years. So it's an interesting one. We're going to have to follow it. And I'm sure when we do get back to racing and we're in Jerez, there'll be a lot of questions asked about that sort of thing too, unless there's some kind of announcement beforehand. And then, of course, Valentino Rossi saying that there's positive talks between him and Petronas SRT, so the team that Fabio Quartararo currently races with, the satellite Yamaha team, so Rossi could see out his career riding a satellite Yamaha while you've got Vinales and Quartararo on the factory bikes. So much excitement, so much racing to look forward to, and yeah, it all starts off, I guess, with the Supercars at the end of this month. IndyCar was a good taste of it. How's everyone else going to adapt to the biosecurity measures to make sure that, we don't have any positive COVID tests during the weekend or amongst the playing group? So far, NRL has been fine, apart from a few individual breaches. AFL as well. We'll see how they go this week. Or this weekend, I should say. But yeah, I think things are starting to restart, and slowly we are discovering the new normal, and with sport, of course. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week. A lot, obviously, to have talked about and to open up about as well. As I said, if you want to get in touch with the podcast, do so via Twitter at @HitTheApexMedia. Be happy to answer any questions or just have a chat if you want about, things that I've talked about, pressing matters, of course, and, just hopefully everyone stays safe and does their best to end, what is going on at the moment with systemic racism. Quickly as well, if you want to get on the Sportaholic podcast as well to hear what I had to say to Josh, you can just give them a search. They're on all good podcast platforms. Give them a follow on Twitter as well at Joshua_T_Kerr as well. So he pretty much covers everything, bit of cricket, bit of rugby, soccer as well, if you're into that sort of stuff. I know I'm not. Nothing against you, Josh, but I'm just not a big soccer fan, as you would have heard on the podcast before. And yeah, of course, all the motorsport stuff too, on four wheels. So thank you again for tuning in this week. Take care, and we will return next week. Ciao.